Hello everybody, thank you for coming here. Um, I wanted to say that probably there will be a bit of a difference in my speech than my two previous colleagues, because first of all I work just by myself. There's no big studio behind me, and all my life I work that way. I don't know if it's good or bad, but that's how it turned out. I studied in Warsaw, in Poland. There was where I grew up as well. And at some point, still in art school, I decided that I wanted to go elsewhere for various reasons. There was 1980. It was still communism in Poland. My personal situation was somewhat complicated, and I ended up hitchhiking my way to Paris, working there as a bartender, and then eventually, a few months later, getting to New York. And I stayed in New York for roughly about 30 years. I think it's a little too long, actually. But it was interesting, especially in the beginning of my stay, because New York was a very interesting place. There was a lot going on. There was the end of the 70s, the early 80s. There was pre-MTV time, so the world for the young people or for the pop culture was still somewhat different than today. And I arrived there. I didn't speak the language. I was illegal. I didn't have money. I ended up staying in the dressing room of a theater for some time. That saved me really, because I didn't have to pay anything for it. And slowly but surely I started getting work, which wasn't easy. I was going around showing a portfolio that I sort of made quickly based on my experiences in Poland, studying in Poland, and what I was taught in Poland, which turned out to be somewhat irrelevant to the market needs in America at the time. So that didn't help much. It was somewhat an uphill battle. And eventually I started working, working on music videos, being responsible for the visuals, building sets and props, etc. for different music videos. That was the early 80s when the whole industry was just starting, and nobody really knew what's going to become out of it, and if that's a good idea or a bad idea. So the budgets were low, and there was a lot of work, and pretty much everybody worked almost for free, and we worked crazy hours, but it was quite exciting. And from that, I moved on working on animation, pretty much designing sequences for animation and doing more and more drawings. And because of that, I also started doing illustration work, because that seemed natural. It didn't require too much money to set up your own studio. You just needed paper, brushes, some markers, and some luck in getting work. So I'm going to start my slideshow by, this is my signature is letter F, so this is kind of a composition made of different Fs that somebody made for me in Asia, and I thought that kind of looked good, so I put it as my first slide. This is actually my first job in my life. It was I did it with my father, who was a graphic designer. I was 8 years old, and it was a cover for a magazine. It was very popular in Poland. It was sort of today you would say it was a lifestyle magazine. It was called Tia, You and Me, and it was monthly, and every month there was a new cover, obviously, and people pay a lot of attention to these covers. There were, in Poland, the graphic arts in the 60s and 50s, 60s, 70s were really very important. And this, even though there was just a magazine cover, it was sort of worked almost like a poster, because everybody would check what the next month issue would bring. And this was, of course, inspired by the Beatles, and it was after the movie Hard Day's Night was shown in Poland, I was a little kid and I was totally impressed by the film, and my life really changed after seeing that movie. And that was sort of the impression after it. These are some advertisements that I did in New York City for a company called Barney's New York, which is a department store, and sort of a more on the cutting edge. They're more experimental in terms of the merchandise. And at the time, this is about 1990, something like this, they were also experimenting with different visuals for their store. That also meant that even the window display was very different and kind of adventurous. So it was a good time to work for them, and these ads would appear daily in New York Times and Los Angeles Times. Around the same time, I got a job with the New Yorker. And New Yorker is a famous weekly magazine in New York. And when I said that I got a job, it wasn't that easy because a lot of people wanted to work for them. They had, at the time, they didn't even use photography for the magazine. Everything, any kind of visual was an illustration or a cartoon. And I was recommended by somebody to go and see one of the main editors, and it was very difficult to get to talk to her or even to see her. You had to talk to a number of secretaries to get your appointment, and somehow I managed, and I managed, and I was very proud of myself. And I went to the meeting, and I was waiting by the front desk of the magazine. And all of a sudden, the telephone rings, and the guy who's sitting behind the front desk answers it, and he talks to somebody and puts down the phone and says that the editor is very sorry, but she cannot make it. So that was it for my appointment. But somehow I was sober enough to leave some samples of my work. And 3 years later, I got a call. And I got a call, and to make the long story short, from that time on, I started working for them, and I worked for them pretty much weekly. Sometimes I had 2-3 jobs a week for about 6 years. And that was very exciting, somewhat stressful because it's a weekly, so if you do a job, you usually have maybe 24 hours or sometimes even less. Sometimes just overnight job that you have to do. But it's a fantastic magazine with really great articles, and people that work for the magazine are really good. So it was very inspiring, really, to work for them. The previous image was actually a German chancellor who made the Deutschmark very powerful. So it was a portrait for him, for an article about that. This was another portrait for this is an American writer, Nathaniel West, who lived in Paris for a while in the late 1920s and early 30s. And this was for a story that was published in a magazine by him, a short story by Nathaniel West. This was another image for a fiction piece. They have weekly, they have, every week they have a short fiction piece. And it's kind of a difficult task to do an illustration for a fiction piece that doesn't look too goofy and somewhat, childish. So it's kind of a tricky situation. Also, the magazine is always nervous that somebody might make a drawing that's a little bit too edgy, or it's always a lot of concern from different points of view of the publisher. I mean, the main editor, then the fiction editor, etc., etc. So it's not an easy job, but I'm actually quite pleased with this. And it turned out that the writer of the of this fiction piece. She liked it so much that her boyfriend, who is another writer, decided to buy it for her from me for Valentine's, because it was around the time. So it was very pleasant that they actually appreciated it. And the story is about a guy who lives in a tiny apartment in New York somewhere, and he's an old guy who is reminiscing his childhood and his time during the Second World War. It's a Jewish guy who went through a concentration camp. And, sort of a hermit that doesn't leave the house and has all these books around. And somehow, I don't know why, I put that bird over there. And then, because there was no bird in the story. But then when I met the writer, it turned out that that story was just one chapter of the whole book. And she asked me, how did you know that there's a bird in the book? I said, I had no idea. So somehow I managed to see that. This was another story. It's about Bin Laden, and it's him. This was an invitation to a party that New Yorker was doing for Fashion Week in New York. And slowly I started doing also more somewhat more design-oriented work for them, designing logos and things like this, apart from the illustrations in the magazine. And once or twice a year they would produce a big party, and it would be pretty much whole New York that was considered important at the time at those parties, so it was kind of fun to participate and do something for it. Now I'm going to show some letters that capital letters that I did for about 4 years in a row, for every week, for the fiction pieces that they would print. They decided not to use illustrations, but they wanted a first letter of the story to be somewhat illustrated or illuminated, I don't know if there's a better word for it, that would give a bit of the character of the story. That was a really fun job, because it was always, it had to be, it was a challenge of using the actual letter and somehow finding something in it that would bring the plot of the story to that one letter. These were sort of little icons or little logos that I did for another page. There was a movie page with all the listings of the movies being shown in New York at the time, and that would change every month. This is another letter. This as well. This is another letter, letter M. That's again for the film page. This was a logo that I did for them for their press release that they would send out before the issue would be in the newsstands. And the whole issue was about black in America, meaning black people in America. And I did on several occasions on different special issues. They asked me to do the sort of logotype or whatever you call it. This was for their book page, also a little icon. This is another letter. I remember this was a love story. It started with the letter I. This was a letter U. This was for the women's issue. This was an image that I did for another magazine that was called Talk Magazine, and actually the editor-in-chief of the New Yorker, Tina Brown, when she left New Yorker, she started Talk Magazine. And this appeared a week after the 9/11. They didn't know what to do, if they wanted to use a photography or illustrated image, and they asked me to do this for their first Inside magazine page. So it wasn't cover, but it was right after you open the magazine. That was the image. There was sort of about, obviously about the drama, the tragedy that happened, and right after the 9/11, people starting lighting up candles, and there were these corners all over the city where there were hundreds of candles just standing on a curb of the street, and it was very touching, very very moving. Around that time, I got contacted by people that worked at the actually one woman that worked for the Barney's New York. I showed you those 3 ads that I did for them. And that was about 6 years later. She quit her job probably 5 years earlier and disappeared from my life at least. And all of a sudden she called me up, and turned out she lived in London. And she asked me if I was interested in working for a Japanese fashion designer. Their name is Comme des Garçons, and they are quite famous for being sort of a very unruly and atypical fashion house. So obviously there was an interesting client to be contacted by, and I said yes, of course, I want to work for them. And that was in 1999, and I still work for them today, and it's probably my best client, I can say. I did a lot of work for them, and this comes from the first job, which was a brochure. They asked me to do a brochure for them that would have 9 or 10 images, and there would be just images, nothing else, no text, no nothing. This was to sort of announce their new collection coming to stores. I asked them if they can show me the collection. They said they don't want me to see the collection, and they want me to do something totally just out of my mind, not connected to anything I've seen about their work. So there was a bit of a challenge, because I had so much freedom to do something, and this is was quite new to me, that there will be a client who tells you just do anything. And of course, you know that even if you have all the freedom in the world, they're not going to like everything you do, because there's no such possibility. So they asked me for about 10 images. I did about 65 of them. There was not much time. It was like 1 week of work. And I just want to make sure that I don't blow the opportunity, and that they actually choose something out of the 65 images. They liked it so much that they used some extra images for advertisements, and they asked me, and for around Christmas time, so also for holiday greetings. And they asked me to, if I would be interested in working more with them, and I'll show you just in a minute what happened. So these are the images from the first brochure I did for them. And you know, obviously the idea was to do something fairly bold and easy to remember. So these are some of the images from that job. Now this is one of the ads that came out, and there was printed as a poster as well. That came from that first group of images that I did for them. So this and this one, there was sort of the one was the positive, one negative, and they actually printed them together in the magazines, sort of 2 double spread pages. and then they send out the posters as flyers, as folded flyers to different clients. This was another job that I did for them. There was also a flyer that was poster size and it was folded. They started a store in Milan with some other people, and they were advertising it for themselves, really, because they were selling a lot of the products there. Okay, this is the job that really came out of the first job, which was that they asked me to create prints for their clothes for the new upcoming fashion show for women and for men, but there was more work for women. And for women, the theme was punk. Even though there was year 2000, they wanted sort of the updated version of punk. So these were my images, designs that I did for them. They were basically eyes. Some of them were printed on lace. Some of them were the lips with razor blades. Okay. And it was funny because they lost some customers, some clients. Apparently, some of the buyers from Saudi Arabia objected to the imagery of the lips with razor blades, and they dropped the Comme des Garçons from their department stores. So, but Comme des Garçons actually was very proud of it. So it's kind of to show you what kind of client they are. They're very adventurous, and it's a woman who's behind the everything, and she's about 71, 72 years old now, and she's just amazing. She's a powerhouse, and it's a lot of fun working for them. This was something that I did for them that was for a new line that they started only about 2-3 years ago. It's called Black, and they wanted some text, some imagery. So this is it. Okay, and eventually I developed a logo for one of their other new lines. It's called Play, and it became a big hit. And it was all sort of coincidence. I created this image for them, but for another job, and they didn't use it. And I thought, well, okay, this is what happens. That you produce some work, they choose some work, and some work never gets used. But then about 3 months later, they called me and they said, do you remember this heart you did? I said, yes, sure. So can we use it as a logo? I said, sure. And I had no idea what they were using it for, what line was it supposed to be, or even, I didn't even know if it was a line or something else that they were starting. And now, in Asia, it's probably one of the most bootlegged, meaning faked, products that close with that logo. So it's actually kind of fun to see it being bootlegged and being popular. And I talked to them once that they should make an exhibition of all the bootlegged clothes that were made with this logo. They didn't like the idea too much, but I thought it would be interesting. Because in China, you go to a little market and you have this logo all over the little stands. There are like street stands with baby clothes or with any kind of clothes that have nothing to do with the Comme des Garçons, but the logo is there. So I think it's kind of funny. This was what they call a cousin to the red heart, and it was sort of a sub-line to that play line. This is just how they used it. They produced the perfume at some point, and just using merchandise. When they produced the perfume, they asked me to create some images for the launching of the perfume. Usually for the fashion houses, the perfume is very important. They make apparently more money on perfume than on their clothes. And that goes for pretty much every fashion house. So I was doing different things, and at the same time I was working. I got contacted by these people in Taiwan who invited me to be a part of the exhibition that was called Happy Living, and it was done. It was in a museum. They called it a museum. I didn't know what. At first, I assumed it was a regular museum. It turned out that it was in an alternative space that was opened 7 days a week for 24 hours each day. So it was non-stop open, and they invited me plus some other people, but everybody else was just they just sent their work, and they invited me physically. I actually flew to Taiwan and did the job on the spot, and I used these birds for the idea of the happy living. And Comme des Garçons, I don't remember how it was, but somehow they saw these birds, and they liked them so much that they decided to use them as well for the launching of the perfume. And I told them that it's already some, used for another venue, but they didn't mind. They said that's fine. So it was sort of had two lives. And this is an example of a T-shirt they printed for the launching. This is the product itself. And here there's some examples of different T-shirts that I've done through the years for them, because T-shirt, as you might know, is sort of a new medium that's being quite popular, and I guess it's easy to produce and almost becomes like a new poster today. And there might be many different occasions, and people love to produce T-shirts regardless of what the occasion is. So there were many T-shirts that I did for them. Some of them were strictly sort of fashion T-shirts used for and sold in their stores. Some were more promotional. This one was, and the next one as well will be, they asked me to do some trompe-l'oeil designs for them, for the T-shirts. So now coming back to those birds, I sketched quite a few of them before going to Taiwan. And why did I decide on birds was because I was at the time I was in Poland because my mother passed away. And it was kind of a difficult time for me. It was winter time, it was cold, it was February, really gray. And I had to deal with all the sad stuff connected to somebody's death. And then I was taking walks just to try to relax, and I was going to a park that's nearby, and there was nobody there because it was too cold to really hang out there. But there were hundreds, if not thousands of birds, and usually around 4 p.m. there were these crows that gathered on trees, and it was quite amazing because they made a lot of noise, and it was almost like an industrial sound. And they would start flying in these flocks of 2,000 birds at once, and it made a big impression on me. And I knew already that I'll be going to Taiwan and trying to come up with an idea what happy living meant for me. And I was thinking that one is free as a bird, so I kind of like that idea of sort of escaping and being a bird. And so that's why I created all these birds. And then in Taiwan, each of us, we got these, I call them like dog houses, but they were big. They were about 3.5, 4 meters high, and about 3.5 meters long, and I don't know, about 2.5 wide. And we had to do something with them. So I created this bird dog house, bird house. And these are actually some pictures that I found on the internet later that I liked. These were actually some people that would come, and I would work mostly at night because there was so many people coming during the day that it was really difficult to work, because you had about as many people as there are here sitting in silence and just watching me mix paint, for example. And maybe for 40 minutes nothing will be going on, because I'll be just preparing to do something, but they'll be silently watching me, and it was a bit stressful. So I usually would start around midnight and work till about 5 in the morning, but still, even then, there would be people coming, and people would be taking pictures, and they're very curious people in general, and there would be really any kind of people you could imagine would be stumbling upon this place, which was very nice because it's very democratic in a way, and people would talk to you. They're very open, incredibly friendly society, and people in general. So it was very easy to talk to somebody, and they were taking pictures. And at one point, I realized that everybody's taking pictures, but I don't see any of those pictures. So finally, I said to this group of girls, I said, okay, so send me some images. Here's my email. And actually, we eventually became friends, and so we still, it was 4 years ago, we still stay in touch. This was a job that I did for a Japanese company that's called Medicom. And they're a strange company because they started as a producer of a action figure that's called Bear Brick. And I'm not sure really why they're making those action figures. There are some kind of collector items, and they ask people like myself to, either paint them in different colors or do something special with them, and that's how they started. But then also they branched out, and now they're doing other things, and one of the things is that they produce fabrics, and they asked me to create a fabric for them, and that was it. And this is the negative version of it. And it was actually kind of a successful thing for them. They were very happy with it. They produced different items, but mainly I think they sell it just as a fabric. And you can buy it from sort of very thin silk-like fabric to a thick canvas. These are those bear bricks that I was telling you about, and they asked me to do some designs with them, and I tried to get away from the look that comes with the figure, and I moved the eyes to the ears, and I thought that looked actually better than where they're supposed to be. And these were some of the examples that I presented them with, and they chose some, and I think they produced them. This was another client. This one was from Hong Kong, and I should mention that somewhat because of the Comme des Garçons, eventually I started working more and more for the Asian clients, and these days probably about 98% of my work comes from Asia, which I'm quite happy about because they are very adventurous, much more so than the American clients, and the jobs are sometimes quite unusual, which I like, so that's kind of fun. So this client contacted me to design an umbrella, just the canopy of the umbrella, and we decided on these sort of drips, and here are different options that I gave them, different color combinations. There's one slice missing simply because if you fold it, then it becomes round. That's how I had to prepare it for them, present it for them. And there was another version with sort of the smaller drips, but they went for the big drip. So. This is another client, also from China, but this time from Beijing. It's a company kind of like Adidas or Nike. It's called Li Ning, and the owner of the company is Mr. Li Ning, who won 3 medals at the Los Angeles Olympics in gymnastics. So that was in mid-80s. When he came back to China, he was a big hero, And I guess even then, when it was sort of a deep communism, they allowed him to start his own company. And that company became huge, and it's fourth in the world now, right behind Nike, Adidas, and Puma. And they only sell in China, but they are fourth in the world. They apparently have 8,000 retail stores in China alone. And that was for their 20th anniversary. Also, if you maybe watched the opening ceremony of the Beijing Olympics, Mr. Li Ning was the one who lit the torch. He sort of flew over the stadium and lit the torch. So he's a big deal in China. And this was, they wanted, for the 20th anniversary, they had two different lines of sportswear, and they wanted me to do one that was for the 20th anniversary, and another one that was called Star, and was somewhat different. But these are some proposals we did for them. And first, they wanted the designs to be connected to certain sports that are typically Asian, like badminton is very popular in Asia, and they wanted that. Then they sort of changed their mind along the way, but that happens quite often with clients. So these were some images that were used for that design. This is how it was supposed to look on the t-shirts. This was for the Star, and some designs for that. This was the 20. And eventually they settled on this 20. Here you can hardly see anything, but it's on a t-shirt, actually. And they produced the sneakers. There was their sort of the flagship old school sneaker that they revived for that occasion. There was the hats. This was the Star that they chose to use for another line. And then I had to go a year later, after the job was done and everything was ready to be launched. They invited me to come to Beijing and to participate in the opening ceremony for those two lines. And it was a big deal for them. They rented this huge space, and there was an exhibition of the new lines that we worked on, as well as some of my previous work. So this is actually how it was presented. The number 20 was on these big plexiglass panels, and it looked quite nice actually, because it gave this depth. It sort of disappeared into eternity kind of thing. This is my daughter who came with me, and she was my assistant at the time. And this is her tired of working. We actually had a lot of work. We thought we were just going to celebrate and have some good Chinese food, but it turned out it was really hard work. This was a poster I did for Chopin Year, which was last year in Poland. Obviously, Poland is very fond of Chopin, and there were a million things going on. And this was a exhibition of posters that were about Chopin through the years, from 1948 to 2010. This was another poster that I did for a boutique who had a Christmas sale, and it's a sort of a high fashion boutique in Warsaw. And this was a poster for my exhibition that was last May in Warsaw, and I used that image earlier for a greeting card, also for the New Year's, last New Year's. This was a pretty recent job that I did for a Japanese company that is trying to convince different fashion businesses around the world to donate money to the victims of the tsunami in Japan. And they wanted something that was connected to fashion and also that had a positive message. And that's why they wanted the word love in it. So that's how it came out. And this is the image that I did also for the New Yorker for their movie page. And this is the last image of the show. Thank you.